What exactly is a short story? In a recent class, I was asked, what is a short story? My first answer was that it was something that could be read in one sitting and brought an illumination to the reader, sudden and golden, like sunlight cracking through heavy cloud. I went on to say that, in my opinion, a real short story was closer to poetry than to the novel. Not all my students were convinced. Let's discuss word count. When is a short story too long to still be a short story? Is there an official point where a short story becomes a novella, another where a novella becomes a novel? Is Hemingway's The Old Man and the Sea truly a novel? Let's set an arbitrary limit of words. For now, let's agree that stories up to 10,000 words in length are short stories. I'm not trying to be definitive here, so let's look at some definitions of the short story. My favorite is Benier's, something that can be read in an hour and remembered for a lifetime. One writer said, "The theme of a novel will not fit into the framework of a short story. It's like trying to squeeze a mural into the frame of a miniature. And, as in a miniature painting, the details need to be sharp." The short story is an example of one facet of human nature. Often a character undergoes some event and experiences something that offers him or her change. This is why it's said that short stories usually say something, often a small something, but sometimes delivered with such precision that the effect is exquisite, even a life-changing moment for some readers, something similar to a religious experience, or to witnessing a never-to-be-repeated scene in nature. The perfect short story is written with a poet's sensitivity for language, with a poet's precision. The shape and sounds and rhythms of the words are more commonly part of the effect than they usually are in the novel. Just as in a poem, the bare words themselves are never the complete meaning. They interact with each other. Their sounds do things. How they are placed on the page matters. The poem tries to create a piece of truth, an insight into being human, and the form is so tight, so sparse, that we can argue over exact meanings long into the night. One reason for the confusion students often have over the definition of short stories is that other word forms, anecdotes, sketches, vignettes, or slices of life often find their ways into them. These are often pretty and faintly moving, but somehow they leave us with a slightly unsatisfied feeling. The fewer words we use below a certain point, let's imagine this point is 1,500 words. The harder it is to have something clearly happen to a character and have that occurrence change him or her. So, for now, under 10,000 words is at the long end of short stories. But how short? Are we saying under 1,500 words is not a short story? Great writers can do in 600 words what a solid writer might manage in 1,100. Maybe at 500 words, the confinement begins to create a new form, often very interesting, but more of an intellectual exercise, literary showing off rather than a natural giving of truth. In the United Kingdom, there's an annual competition for stories, complete in exactly 50 words. Here is one. Frank believed in his luck. Frank smoked too much, but he knew he'd never die of a heart attack or lung cancer. Frank smoked all the time. One day, there was a gas leak in Frank's kitchen. Frank went to fix it. He didn't die of a heart attack or lung cancer. It's fun and sort of complete, but it isn't likely to find a place in our hearts and change our outlook on life. Technically, it's a story, and short it definitely is. But short story? I argue it is not. There is a degree of unity in a well-thought-out short story, one I tend to call its theme. This kind of intensity in a novel would indeed tire the reader. But in the one-sitting contract with the reader of a short story, it is presumed that he or she will cope. Hence, when the story has quality, often the experience seems profound. Okay, so let's form a definition here. A short story is a narrative, rarely over 10,000 words or below 500 words, more commonly 1,500 to 5,000 words. A single sitting read, but with enough time and weight to move the reader. It is narrow and focused to produce a singular effect through the story, most commonly through events affecting some change or denial of change in an individual. All aspects of a short story are closely integrated and cross-reinforcing. Language, point of view, tone and mood, the sounds as well as the meanings of the words, and their rhythm. Writer Isabel Allende once wrote, "Novels are, for me, adding up details. Just work, 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 then you're done. Short stories are more difficult. They have to be perfect, complete in themselves."
An interview with J.K. Rowling. Divorced. Living on public assistance in an Edinburgh apartment with her infant daughter, J.K. Rowling wrote Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone at a cafe table. Fortunately, Harry Potter rescued her. In this Amazon.co.uk interview, Rowling discusses the birth of our hero, the Manchester hotel where Quidditch was born, and how she might have been a bit like Hermione when she was 11 years old. How old were you when you started to write, and what was your first book?
I wrote my first finished story when I was about 6. It was about a rabbit called Rabbit. Very imaginative. I've been writing ever since.
Why did you choose to be an author?
If someone asked for my recipe for happiness, step 1 would be finding out what you love doing most in the world, and step 2 would be finding someone to pay you to do it. I consider myself very lucky indeed to be able to support myself by writing.
Where did the ideas for the Harry Potter books come from?
I've no idea where ideas come from, and I hope I never find out. It would spoil the excitement for me if it turned out I just have a funny little wrinkle on the surface of my brain, which makes me think about invisible train platforms.
How do you come up with the names of your characters?
I invented some of the names in the Harry books, but I also collect strange names. I've gotten them from medieval saints, maps, dictionaries, plants, war memorials, and people I've met.
Are your characters based on people you know?
Some of them are, but I have to be extremely careful what I say about this. Mostly, real people inspire a character, but once they are inside your head, they start turning into something quite different. Professor Snape and Gilderoy Lockhart both started as exaggerated versions of people I've met, but became rather different once I got them on the page. Hermione is a bit like me when I was 11, though much cleverer.
Are any of the stories based on your life, or on people you know?
I haven't consciously based anything in the Harry books on my life, but of course that doesn't mean your own feelings don't creep in. When I reread Chapter 12 of the first book, The Mirror of Erised, I saw that I had given Harry lots of my own feelings about my own mother's death, though I hadn't been aware of that as I had been writing.
Where did the idea for Quidditch come from?
I invented Quidditch while spending the night in a very small room in the Bourneville Hotel in Didsbury, Manchester. I wanted a sport for wizards, and I'd always wanted to see a game where there was more than one ball in play at the same time. The idea just amused me. The Muggle sport it most resembles is basketball, which is probably the sport I enjoy watching most. I had a lot of fun making up the rules, and I've still got the notebook I did it in, complete with diagrams, and all the names for the balls I tried before I settled on snitch, bludgers, and quaffle.
Where did the ideas for the wizard classes and magic spells come from?
I decided on the school subjects very early on. Most of the spells are invented, but some of them have a basis in what people used to believe worked. We owe a lot of our scientific knowledge to the alchemists.
What ingredients do you think all the Harry Potter books need?
I never really think in terms of ingredients, but I suppose if I had to name some, I'd say humor, strong characters, and a watertight plot. These things would add up to the kind of book I enjoy reading myself. Oh, I forgot. Scariness. Well, I never set out to make people scared, but it does seem to creep in along the way.
Do you write longhand or type onto a computer?
I still like writing by hand. Normally I do a first draft using pen and paper, and then do my first edit when I type it onto my computer. For some reason, I much prefer writing with a black pen than a blue one, and in a perfect world, I'd always use narrow, faint writing paper. But I have been known to write on all sorts of weird things when I didn't have a notepad with me. The names of the Hogwarts houses were created on the back of an airplane sick bag. Yes, it was empty.